To Washington at the dash to pass. Lawmakers just cranking out a deal on that transportation bill. Now, it was set to expire at the end of the week, and it's not coming cheap. That legislation alone, $109 billion. But as our debt keeps mounting to Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee, with a simple question, why no zeal or effort to come in on weekends to cut spending? Senator, that's a novel concept, but I don't see it out of your colleagues. What's the deal there?
You know, we've seen, Neil, a lot of motion in Congress without a whole lot of forward progress. This is a problem that Congress refuses to acknowledge the fact that we have a desperate need for tax reform, for spending reform, for regulatory reform. And yet we haven't really hit on any of those major issues. We've got to turn that around. We've got to focus on those things because it's those things that will help spur job creation that we so desperately need.
But it doesn't happen. As again, a $109 billion piece of legislation, that's all but a done deal, at least in the Senate. And then there's this other effort on college loans, what have you. Whether justified or not, I just see a lot of zeal for continuing to add to the pile of debt and not much to at least start digging through that debt.
That's right. The same kinds of spending problems that have gotten us almost $16 trillion in debt, that have led us to the point where we've gone 3 years without a budget, that have resulted in our continuing to have $1.3 trillion annual deficits, are the same kinds of things that we're following right now. That is a big problem, and that's one of the things that the American people will be looking at when they go to the ballot box this November.
What do you think of the possibility, should the president lose at least, let's say, the mandatory coverage part of this health care law that a lot of people seem to think would torpedo this law, they say would keep it thriving just in a different way, that the president will have that wind at his back? He's been emboldened by polls that show him, with all these problems you and others have mentioned, Senator, he's leading in the polls, spreading that lead a little bit better in the latest Wall Street Journal poll in these battleground states, so that if we're going to hell in a handbasket, the American people appear to be saying, okay, not great, okay, but enough for us to put him back there.
I just don't think that's going to happen. Look, the American people aren't with him when it comes to the individual mandate. This mandate offends their basic sense of fairness. It tells us as Americans that government bureaucrats in Washington know better how to make decisions for our health care than we know how to make ourselves in consultation with our doctors. Americans don't buy this, and they're going to hold this president accountable for trying to push this onto us against our will.
Well, you know, I've heard from a number of Democrats, Senator, and this kind of makes sense from their point of view if you hear this, that let's say the court shoots this down and then premiums start rocketing. Really rocketing. And then, you know, they've been rocketing anyway, but they really would start rocketing. These companies that have promised to cover you for pre-existing conditions and all, they'll continue doing so, but they're going to charge you through the nose for it. And then the administration will come back and say, well, we tried to help, and look what's happening.
Well, I don't see that happening. I mean, first of all, you have to assume a lot of things in order to get to that posture. You have to assume that the court invalidates the individual mandate while not invalidating basically anything else. You have to assume further that Congress does nothing to change the law from there. That's a lot of assumptions, and it's a lot of assumptions from there about how the market
you're assuming then, I guess, from your vantage point, the court shoots down the whole thing. It wouldn't shoot down part of the thing. I just listened to Congressman Ron Paul, who says that's not the court's history. It will shoot down part of something, but not all of something. So I don't know who's right between you, but
he's a great physician, and I respect Ron Paul greatly.
You think the whole thing is shot down?
I think that there is a very good chance that if the court, in fact, invalidates the individual mandate, that it will, at a minimum, also invalidate some other provisions of the Act, including and especially the guaranteed issue provisions and the community rating provisions. So I don't think that we'll have a surgical removal of the individual mandate while nothing else is taken out.
All right, we'll see. We'll know tomorrow. Senator, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.